is for friends.
I thought this music was so epic.
We all like talking about gaming.
The only thing that I disliked about the old game.
There are so many different conversations started by gaming.
Oh, I forgot. I have you.
This could be anything.
Okay, walk in that green goo. Oh, that's a no.
Anything Gaming Podcast. Hi, and welcome to Anything Gaming. We're actually on episode 14, so we're going through some episodes. Today we're all about conspiracies and lots of conspiracies, things like that in video games, about video games, all that time, anything video gaming. That's like the podcast that we're doing. So, Mr. Woody, how are you today? And
I'm doing well, and I just want to wish everyone over in the States right now happy Thanksgiving. I just ate a whole bunch of turkey, and I'm still up. I didn't have too much because I'm still trying to keep to the diet. And other than that, though, I'm doing very well. I do want to apologize for my voice. I've come down with a cold, and it's really knocked my voice down pretty hard. I can't really talk loudly, so I'll try to be as clear as possible.
I think they're trying to silence you because you have too many conspiracies to tell people
You
about.
know what? You're right. It's a conspiracy on itself. We're going to be talking about gaming conspiracies. We've been throwing the ball around, and now they need to silence us because we're going to be talking about things, conspiracy things.
That's right. So yeah, we know too much. That's our problem.
Yeah.
And you play anything different this week? Anything before we get into this? What did you do this week in the gaming world?
Well, I was still going through Half-Life for the PS2. I'm actually going to do a complete sweep of the Half-Life saga. Hopefully, by the time I wrap up episode 2 of Half-Life 2, I'll be able to get Alex to work. I just need to do something with my VR set. But that means I'm going to be playing through Half-Life plus the add-ons for that. Then I'll be going to Half-Life 2. Yeah, so that I might even throw Portal in the mix there. And I figured if I was going to start with that, because I did Black Mesa, I wanted to do the original Half-Life, but I figured make it a little different and actually play the PS2 port of Half-Life, the original Half-Life. It's not as good to play as the PC version, I can't lie, but it holds some nostalgic value to me. It was like not having a PC growing up. It was my copy of Half-Life 1, so I enjoyed it, and it still brings back good memories.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I was lucky enough to do a dev live stream this week, so that was pretty fun. Godfeather, I
watched some of that. Yeah, it looked like a very interesting game. I enjoyed it.
Roguelike Pua. You got to go around as a bird pooping on people. I should explain what was happening there.
Finally, how long have we been asking for a game where you can go around pooping on things? It's finally here after all these years.
Yeah. In a roguelike form. So what conspiracy are you going to start us with? Where are we going with this?
Well, I want to start with probably my favorite conspiracy, and that is the conspiracy of Polybius. I believe that's what it's named after, the ancient Greek philosopher Polybius, but it has nothing to do with that. So Polybius was a video arcade machine, supposedly, now this is all supposed, released in limited quantities in the American West, like I believe near Oregon, 1981. I could be wrong on the location, but it was 81. Very low copies, cabinets of this were produced for arcades. According to legend, the kids that would play this, some of them started getting headaches. And I think there was a case of a reported seizure. While this is going on, every night when the arcade would close, these men in black suits, all that, would come by and supposedly collect data from these arcade cabinets. After a couple of months, these men in black came by, collected the arcade cabinets, left, and that was that.
That was the end of the game.
Any word about it. Yeah. Supposedly, it's that they were collecting, just things like, reaction time data from, nefarious stuff. Who knows? I mean, when you say it out loud, it sounds not unsimilar to the last Starfighter movie, which actually it's kind of funny. It's a trope that's been used, but a kid's playing doing good at a game, and turns out, oh, the aliens made the game because they need to train for the best person that can fight the evil galactic empire. But this was a lot more nefarious. There's been rumors of it. It's been leaked at different points. It's actually been made. There is a Polybius game. It has nothing to do with the original urban legend. I can't even tell you what kind of game Polybius is, because reports of Polybius always vary from person to person. That's the reason why the urban legend itself, like a lot of people think, yeah, this never happened, but there is a lot of evidence that does support it quite a bit, and it's actually popped up in different things. Polybius is in the new Loki television series.
Yeah,
actually see, and Polybius actually makes its way into an episode of The Simpsons, and we're talking like '90s Simpsons. This is always like a rumor. Like the Polybius rumor has been around for a long time.
There's so many. The Simpsons are on top of every single conspiracy. So if they did it, it was true. That's 100% right there. I know about that. I didn't really hear much about this one because we were in Australia at the time. So
the report is that the people behind Polybius were also the people behind the MK Ultra project, which was LSD test that the government was doing, like just giving people LSD, and like sometimes voluntarily, sometimes they just snuck it in. And of course, that's once again, that's a rumor on top of a rumor. Who knows? Who would ever know the truth?
Oh, I do love how conspiracies grow over time.
Right. Yeah.
It was one arcade.
The dots, man.
Oh, we should have worn tinfoil hats today. Damn it.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I got the interesting one of the Madden curse, where everyone on the Madden cover would get injured. And I don't even know American football, but I know that this was real. I heard about this a lot over here.
My boy Tom Brady, man, touchdown Tom. Patriots, by the way. I mean, I don't watch football, but I'm in the heart of New England, so Patriots. Mm-hmm. And he was on the cover, and I believe that was the year actually he got injured, or at least he wasn't playing. It happened around there, so I don't know how strong it was. But yeah, you'd always hear about that. Because a lot of my friends, they're football fans. They buy Madden every year, no matter what. So, they know every time they hear a team they'd like, it has, their quarterback is on, man. They're like, uh-oh. That doesn't look good. Yeah. Especially if they're doing fantasy football.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things that, like, it is a funny happenstance. But if you look, plenty of people have been on the cover. In fact, people have done repeats on Madden. They've done 2 in one row. And, of course, I think it was a couple years ago when John Madden actually passed, he was the cover of Madden. Like, they put him on the cover. Because he was only on the original covers, like 89, 90, like up to, I think they started including, like, athletes on there in, like, 99, 2000, like, turn of century.
I'm not even sure if anyone's still on the cover. What do they do nowadays?
No, no. Well, I know that all the major sports titles, like the year Kobe Bryant died, 2020. Oh yeah, I remember the Black Mamba edition coming out. That was big. That was big marketing. Kind of. It
was.
I mean,
sad.
I'm not going to criticize too hard. Selling a dead man's like it, but I'm not a huge basketball fan either. So I'm not one to be able to criticize that. But yeah, you see that with pretty much any game, especially if they're connected to it. Tiger Woods golf, many years. He was on the cover of every single one of those. Now, yeah, eventually he kind of fell from grace, but I don't think that had anything to do with being on a cover of anything.
I would like them to bring out the Tiger Woods behind the scenes game where you got to be like Grand Theft Auto type of thing. You're doing everything about playing golf, everything Tiger Woods does but play golf. I think that would be a bit raunchy and interesting.
No, that'd be it'd be cool, but what was I gonna say? Just like it is one of those weird, not necessarily comparison, but it's just I always found the Madden curse be just kind of cool in a way, especially if you're one of the quarterbacks to like survive it. Like a little feather in the cap. Yeah.
And so, if you are playing along at home, or watching, definitely put in your favorite conspiracies, do the subscribe thing and all that type of stuff. And we'll keep going through some crazy conspiracies. What else do you have for us?
Actually, it's funny. Doing some research for this episode, I decided to some I knew about, some we'll get into. There's a couple that I don't completely buy into, but I want to scratch because they're just big. Everyone knows about them. Mm-hmm. But the one that surprised me was for Final Fantasy VIII. Now, I love Final Fantasy VIII. The characters. Final Fantasy VIII is when JRPGs started being more about teenagers saving the world, which is fine, whatever. But Final Fantasy VII seemed to have a lot more grown-ups in it. It just seemed like to me. But it was still a fun game, and it's about these. It's kind of weird, and I think Harry Potter kind of takes some things from Final Fantasy VIII as far as the concept goes, where these kids are in a school to learn how to fight and do magic and stuff to fight sorceresses. And pretty much right at the end of Disc 1, you and your party are fighting. I don't think you're fighting the sorcerer. Oh yeah, you are. Edna, and I think you also fight Cypher around there too. And you're fighting, and it's an RPG battle. But at the end, and right before Disc 1 ends, she forms these ice crystals, and one impales Squall, the main character, and he falls. And to Disc 1, put Disc 2 in. And then it continues. You're in this prison now. You've been healed, but you're being interrogated about what you know about the sorceress and all that. But according to this theory I read, Squall dies when he gets impaled. Because even though there's, crazy stuff, magic and all that, the tone of the game really ramps up after that happens, it shifts into another gear right at that moment. So the theory of it being just Squall's dying mind, as he just got impaled, kind of like an Owl Creek scenario. I thought was cool. I don't believe it, of course. Naturally, it wouldn't be, but it's a cool little happenstance that I just caught my eye. I was like, oh wow, that's something. It actually brings to mind the there's a conspiracy about Pokemon.
Yeah.
Where if you watch the first episode of the animated series, before Ash actually goes out and starts fighting Pokemon and all that, it's pretty grounded. But he does get electrocuted by Pikachu fairly in the beginning, and after that he chooses him, and then he goes out and he fights and becomes the best there ever was. And a lot of people say that Ash actually dies. Or something like that, him getting shocked dies, and now he's in a coma. And the rest is all just a dream because of how wacky it gets. And he goes traveling and all that stuff. It kind of brings into mind that, even though I don't think that's as solid as the Final Fantasy VIII one.
Well, I think it's got some merit to it because it's very typical of a lot of those Japanese games to be in this kind of weird state, that sleeping state. They enjoy that sleeping state. I mean, Link did it for how many years in Zelda? He's always waking up. So it's very Japanese.
I want to give a shout out though to an occurrence at Owl Creek, which is a short story. It's American Civil War short story that kind of was one of the first instances. It's even though it's a Civil War story, it's considered an original science fiction story because it involves kind of a supposed time loop, but it turns out that the person was dying or dead. Much like the Final Fantasy VIII one would be. I always liked that type of plot device. The Carnival of Souls used it. It makes for an interesting concept and story.
I enjoy that. Don't get me wrong. I think a lot of people are very intrigued of how do you get to sleep? Where is your brain while it's asleep? Then it gets into the afterlife kind of thing. And it's a whole lot of unknown, but everyone kind of feels it's familiar. So I think it's easy to write stories like that. Well, it's hard, but it's easy. It's kind of reachable that people can understand it. So, yeah. What's the go with this Bigfoot one in Grand Theft Auto?
It's cool because I remember that. I remember reading the magazines about that one. I never bothered to look for it. But okay, for San Andreas, if anyone doesn't know, you start out in Los Santos, and at a certain point in the game, you more or less get dumped in the woods in the sticks area, really, of the game. And then it's quite a difference because you've been driving around this urban setting, and now you're in like the woods, and there's a lot of area to cover, a lot of ground. Apparently, at some points in the game, you'll see a Sasquatch walking around. There's never been an official footage. There are mods. It's been modded. It's been inserted by third parties, of course. But that was one of the really first, like, it's kind of funny. The first two real, like, weird conspiracies in a game I ever heard about, three really, were in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, because you had that. You had the hot coffee mod controversy. And also in San Andreas, there was, like, this one I actually did see. There's a part in the game where, for some reason, at a certain time, a random civilian, and this is also, like, in the wooded area, but it's in one of the highways, will actually stand on the ledge of the highway and then fall down.
Yeah, I think I saw that one too.
Yeah.
It's like that was a bit. I don't really love that one in the game. But what was the coffee one? Was that to do with like the Macca's hot coffee on the lap suing saga?
Okay, for anyone that's played Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, there are points of the game where like you'll do dancing or you do something else that requires button timing. You know, press X, press circle, press square, press triangle in the certain motion. Just a little, you know, rhythm mini game. Well, when they were developing the game for the first time, when you take ladies out on dates, there was a sex mini game where, in order to perform well, and it was animated, PlayStation 2 graphics, keep in mind, but it was still animated, where you would put in the button codes. They had to take it out, obviously, because now you could technically print it if you want to, but then it'd be AO, and no major retailer anywhere would sell an AO game. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was one of the things they cut out, but they didn't really cut it out. They just buried it in the programming. But if you happen to have a Game Shark or any other cheating device, you could unlock it. And considering that it was still on the game, that meant that, you know, the content still existed. So it was a big thing. They had to recall a bunch of copies. You know, it was a huge boondoggle for Rockstar at the time. It was all right. It made so much money that like it really didn't hurt that much. But it was it was a issue. And the funny thing is, it's an issue that they reference to this day in certain Grand Theft Auto and even Rockstar games.
I feel like in those late 90s, you almost had to create controversy to sell the games, and even having like something that only one person would find, and then they could talk about it to their friends, and it might not be real or it might be real, was enough to kind of spread like hotcakes everywhere, and everyone wanted to know about that game because of those type of things.
A funny, this ain't so much because.
Whoop, I think you've just broken up for a minute. Internet, everyone's Thanksgiving. So let's just see what happened there. He's trying to come back to us. I'm not sure. We might. Oh,
controversy.
Hang on. Whoa.
Nintendo Power, variation of Nintendo Power back in the day.
Whoa. You just broke up. Just come back. Start again.
Okay. So back in the day, did you ever read Nintendo Power or any certain like magazine? Like,
I was always in the Sony one, so I could get that magic demo disc.
All right. So Nintendo Power was a big magazine, at least here in the States, I believe in Japan too. And the first issue of it had a cover of Super Mario Brothers 2. This was like 1988, and it's considered, you know, like a classic issue.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't forget to remember is that issue 2, the cover was Castlevania 2: Simon's Quest. On one hand, it had a really cool magazine cover. On the other hand, I could see a lot of kids getting scared from it. I didn't. When I saw it when I was a kid, I had no problem with it. I'm just speaking from experience on that one. But it created enough of an uproar that I think they end up pulling like a lot of copies of that, or at least they promised never to do it again, you know, kind of thing. There was a bit of a uproar about it because it was just like I think he's like holding Dracula's head, or something like that, and it's like, you know, Simon all decked out, ready to kill vampires.
Yeah, so I just remember those covers back in those days. One thing that I don't know if I think it's been confirmed now, so this might be not as much a conspiracy, but I think it's actually been confirmed, is the link between Commander Keen, Doom Guy, and Wolfenstein 3D. All of them are ID games, and I think they have all been linked up to being each other's family members or something like that. I find that kind of intriguing that you would actually go and write such very different games to have the same kind of people in the games.
No, no, that is quite intriguing, though. I mean, I don't know. Give me a good example. What do you think? Just so I could work off of. I mean, there's a couple there.
Well, I was talking about whether Commander Keen and Doom Guy are all related, and they're all.
But I'm trying to think of the only thing I know, for example, with that is I do know that Commander Keen is supposedly B.J. Blazkowicz's. Now, this is from Wolfenstein. His great grandson or something like that. They're connected. I don't know where Doom Guy falls into all that, but I do know that Wolfenstein and Commander Keen are supposedly interconnected with that.
Then there is a secret level. There's a secret level in Doom where Commander Keen's hanging upside down, so you can go and kill him, because the legend is that ID Software was so sick of making Commander Keen, and it was such a thorn in their side that they wanted to kill him off for good.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the way it is, though? It's cool that they would do that, just because. Have you ever looked at when you see a popular studio, a studio that just pumps out hit after hit after hit, and you look at maybe their first game, and even if it's successful, it's something they try to back away from. So that it's funny that they do that, and I wouldn't be surprised if I'm sure they must have revisited Commander Keen in time since, at least once or twice. I'm sure there's something somewhere in there. I actually think in one of the new Doom games, there was something involving Commander Keen. If anyone in the comments can clarify on that one.
Yeah.
I never really connected the dots too hard on that particular theory.
Well, it's the... Yeah.
Well, I mean, a lot of games, too, even if you look at Rage, for example, that has, Fallout and Doom connections, only because Bethesda owns that now. So things like that kind of, branch out. They predate themselves. And the way you describe it with Commander Keen and Doom, that ain't too unsimilar than in Duke Nukem when you actually run into a Doom guy.
Yeah.
You find him in the game, and you can, kick him and get the chain gun cannon right behind him. And so, once again, just throwing jabs. They always do that.
Yeah. No, I love those. I love those kind of things. I had a theory, too, about PlayStation where they on purposely hold back. I feel like they've got a warehouse somewhere, probably in Japan. It's got 1 billion PlayStation 5s in it, or PlayStation Portables, and they just hold them back so they don't come out, and then we all want more of them. It's like a marketing strategy for that, so they can get better sales. Have you ever seen any kind of weird links for that whole conspiracy with the sale of games?
I think that's just a microcosm of a bigger problem. I think anything, that's got the demand. If the demand is that strong, who is supplying that demand is holding all the cards, and they can decide what. And Sony is quite, they perpetrate a lot. I just remember how I was talking about I was getting a PlayStation Portal. Didn't happen. So, I hope it happens. Gonna try that Black Friday shopping. Everybody, wish me luck. So I could definitely it's just one of those things that it almost makes sense. But honestly, it's not just games; it's anything. I'm sure even the phone makers do stuff like that. They could probably they know what's gonna sell. And they could probably they're not making the 100% command right now because, there's only so much materials. But I'm sure they just know to release just a little at a time, and that's advertising its own. Now, 1 in every 10 person owns the PlayStation Portal, so they can sell it to potentially boost that number up even more.
Well, now that you can't buy one, I'm actually interested in buying one so I can talk to you about having one. So I get
an arms race?
Yeah,
We got a video game arms race going on. All right.
I feel like that's how it works. They kind of pin each other, because back in the day it was always like Sega versus Nintendo. So it was like I have the Sega, you have the Nintendo. Who's got the better console? But now they're pinning console. Who can get the console? It's not against each other anymore.
Yeah, I mean, the thrill's still there, but just a little dirty now. That's definitely, honestly, I don't even call that a conspiracy. I just call that like
fair enough.
like business. That's a business. That's just like it should be a conspiracy, because at least if it's a conspiracy, it might not be true, but it's clearly true. Like all the evidence points to it.
Yeah.
One conspiracy I want to give a shout out to, because this is more of a creepypasta. Have you ever heard of creepypasta?
No. What's
Like,
creepypasta?
it's supposed to be like, it's like an urban legend, like that's usually created on like a 4chan or Reddit or some type of bulletin somewhere on the interweb, and it just picks up steam. People talk about it and becomes like almost like an urban legend in its own right. There's the suicide mouse one. There's Dead Bart. That's another one. All these weird, and then most of them are on YouTube or something like that, and they're just weird. But it's interesting. It's interesting to see a weird idea just become something like that. Well, what idea was it was this cartridge. It was a Majora's Mask cartridge. No label on it. It was just written Majora's Mask with a Sharpie on it.
Mm.
Now, the person that, got this, he turned it on, and there was a save file on it called Ben. And that's all it was. That's all it was. It just said Ben. The other file was fine. So the person started playing the second file, and all this weird stuff started to happen. The weirdest thing was that all the NPCs, when you name yourself in a Zelda game, they'll refer to your name. They all still refer to him as Ben, but he wasn't playing as Ben. So what he did was he deleted the Ben file and he began a new save file. And when he did that, the game really started acting weird. Music would start playing backwards, and it always looked like you were being followed. Now, to anyone that's played Majora's Mask, I forget the exact mechanics of it, but you can make like a statue dummy of Link in some areas. I forget exactly why. I know it's near the end. It's near like the Death Valley area, but you can do that, and that would start following him, Link in the game. And so a lot of people like started coming up with like theories that Ben had died, and Ben was that kid.
Oh,
and
wow.
So when he turned off the game and came back to it, Ben file came back. Ben file came back, and now the second file was a file called Drowned.
Wow.
So and it ends with every time he tries to play the game, if he plays the second file, he's never played. Like, there's no mention, at least, of him playing the first one. But if he plays the second file, the same stuff happens, and when it comes back, it says drowned again.
That's just way too creepy for me. Like, I'm not into that.
Right? Yeah. Like, it originated as just like a creepypasta. There's no footage of this, or at least no actual original footage. Oh, once again, people have, created footage of it. But, it's just one of those things that just picks up. It's cute. Like, I like shit like that. Just like, give me a fun story.
I like.
I've always been into weird theories.
That would be a really, really cool movie idea right there. I would love to see them make like a horror movie like that. But then, like, it comes to life in your house instead of in the game. Like, I don't know. I think that could really work.
Yeah, but like, while that theory that has been practiced games where things start breaking down, like Eternal Darkness, that's always within the game boundaries. But like, actually, a game starting to like work against you like that, oof! A Nintendo 64 game, that makes it even cooler.
Did you ever hear about the Kill Switch game? It's a very similar kind of idea.
See, it's funny. Anytime I think of the Kill Switch game, I think of the game Kill Switch. It was a PlayStation 2 game, and it's actually an original Resident Evil 4 and Gears of War. This came out before those, and it plays just like those, so it's a cool game like that. But yeah, so Kill Switch or the original Kill Switch, it was made by a Soviet gaming company in 1989, and it's supposedly one of the first real survivor horror titles. You're given the choice between a young girl or an invisible demon as a playable character. You're meant to navigate a mine, but this was the weird thing. When you beat the game, the entire game would delete, just like right off your system. It was a computer game. It would just like delete off the hard drive, just completely.
So are there any of these games left?
According to legend,
Yes.
an intact copy of the game turned up on eBay, it was bought for American $733,000.
Wow.
The person in question who was going to play the game was going to upload to YouTube, but the only video that the person ever uploaded was him staring at a computer crying. And that's where that story ends. And that's where we're at. Yeah. So I mean,
he beat the game, or yeah, wow.
Who knows what happened? I mean, I hope he's doing good wherever he is, and he should have played the PlayStation 2 Kill Switch. That game that's just a game.
Yeah. Everything was experimental a little bit back in the 90s. You could do things like that because you were installing games onto your computer, and those games, you were putting them on there like with discs, and it wasn't so like nowadays, if I put that game onto my computer, that's got a virus or something in there. You cannot play that. And I'd have to jump through a whole heap of hoops to actually play that game because it would see it as malware or something like that. But yeah, you could do that back then.
It was just easier, you know. Some would say better.
So yeah, it was pretty good back then. Did you ever play the Lara Croft mod when she was naked?
No, but I remember actually seeing that. That was even in the early days of the internet, and I didn't have a computer, but I have friends who did, and what else do kids look at than naked ladies? Right? Am I right? 12-year-olds of 1996 and 7. So yeah, I'd see that on a computer. It'd be her day. I mean, it was PlayStation 1 graphics still, so who gave a shit? But it was still cool to see. And of course, again, it's just one of those what's that Rule 32, Rule 36 things where I forget what rule it is, but it's not the best rule, and it was just an early example of that.
I think that was one of the first modded games. Correct me if I'm wrong, but because that game was not on PC at the time, it was only on PlayStation, but somehow the whole game plus Lara Croft's clothes went missing and it made it onto PC. And I don't remember any other games at the time kind of going from PlayStation to PC like that.
It should be noted, though, I do believe that the PC did get Tomb Raider eventually, but it was after the nude Raider modded stuff like that. I think it was like a couple years after for some reason. I think once like Tomb Raider 2 took off, that's when it came out. I could be wrong on that. But yeah, that was just like, obviously you had the computer games like Doom and stuff that you mod before that, but just goes to show you what effect Lara Croft had on the general populace. She was just like this dynamic bombshell, exotic, female heroine just kicking ass in video games.
She was she was the first female heroine as well. The first major mainstream female heroine. There wasn't many before that, I would say.
Not only was there not many for it, but there weren't so that were more overtly. Let's be honest here. We know what sold Lara Croft, to the masses. And if you look at like the female characters, okay, Mrs. Pac-Man, the first female to get her own game in the video game. It's still a yellow circle with a bow. You know what I mean? Metroid, Samus. Again, one of the first big games to have just a female protagonist. But this ain't Zero Suit Samus, you know what I mean? This is Samus wearing the Chozo armor. You don't even know it's a woman until the end of the game. That's kind of the rub.
Yeah.
So Laura Croft was like the first one to be like, I am woman, hear me roar, and come out in a big way. So unfortunately, yes, there were going to be
I would
mods.
say though that was one of the first games where you could go exploring like that as well, and puzzle solving, jumping up walls and ledges. There was a whole lot to that game that I'd never seen before in a game.
Yes. I mean, I did play Tomb Raider 2 recently, and the controls haven't aged as much as you think. Playing the new ones is way easier. Playing Uncharted.
I'm waiting for the re-release the next
Right.
year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still surprisingly solid, I mean, it's still competent. It's easier to get into than a lot of its contemporaries, I'll tell you that. Playing like Siphon Filter or something like that, that's a challenge now.
Yeah.
One other gaming conspiracy, though, I want to give a shout out to, and actually, I shouldn't be giving a shout out since it's somewhat tragic, is the case of Berserk.
Yeah. What was this?
Berserk is an arcade game. As far as like people can tell, it's the only game to ever really kill someone.
Right.
Like, it was an intense game session. The person playing it, probably had other stuff going on. Because come on now. But yeah, after playing it, completed chest pains and end up dying of a heart attack, like right then and there.
Was that a little kid?
No, 19 years old. I mean, definitely not the age to get a heart attack, of course, but yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible. Like, yeah,
it's terrible.
Yeah.
But it's just so weird because, I mean, think of all like the intense games that people have played. This was 1981, you know what I mean? So 30 plus years later, 20 plus, 40 plus years, sorry.
Yeah.
I can't think of any game. People have, unfortunately, arguments. Kids play in the arcade. Oh, you beat me in Mortal Kombat. I will stab you now, kind of thing. But never something like that has happened. Or at least I don't think. If anyone wants to leave any comments, if someone died playing Apex or something.
I don't, not as far as I know.
That.
I'll go into a busted conspiracy because for so many years there was this legend in the gaming world of the ET games being buried. And it took, like, everyone thought they were buried for so long, and they tracked them down and they actually dug them all up. And I thought that was really cool to finally bust a myth, because before
Right. Oh yeah. No, it was such a cool myth. Okay. Of course, ET. To be fair, I've played worse games on the Atari, but not many, and none with this was a AAA title of its day. It was a hot IP, ET. You know what I mean? On a hot system. There was a lot of marketing spent, way more marketing spent on the actual development of the game. So they really put their drive. This was the big Christmas game that you were gonna buy, and it was shit. It was horrible. It was confusing.
Okay, roll back a bit though. There was only one or two guys working on the whole game.
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah. So there was not many people on the game. The time crunch was so small. It was tiny. They decide. So the movie dropped in, say, I'm not sure exactly when, but say it dropped in July, and they wanted to have this for Christmas because I don't think they were expecting the movie to be as big as it was. And then the movie dropped, it went massive, and they're like, oh, we need to make a game for this. And then they kind of did, but it all kind of fell apart because of the time crunch that they had on it. If he had another 6 months to make the game, it would have been probably pretty. That guy was renowned for making fantastic games.
The guy, he made Yar's Revenge, one of my personal favorite games on the Atari. Fantastic game. But yeah, 5 weeks. That's the time they had to actually create an ET game. That's, not a whole lot of time. For anybody, I challenge anyone today to make a competent Atari game with all the tools just in 5 weeks, from conceptualization to actually making it.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
So naturally, when not only did no one buy it, but it also got returned. And just the fact that it got such a bad reputation and that was the wild west of video games. When you release video games, there wasn't like 20 reviews. You could instantly look up all these games to find out what it was. Most of the time, you had no idea what these games were, what they did, or how they did it. It was a real crapshoot. And when after bad game after bad game after bad game, and now you actually get advertised something, and the worst game that it's one of the factors that led to the great video game crash in 1983.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of money riding on that one game. If that game was successful, Atari would probably still be here today. That's how crazy that game was for Atari.
It was. Yeah, no, and it's a shame. But hey, when you make a mess, you got to clean it up. And you find a hole in New Mexico, and you just bury it there and hope for the best. Hope it doesn't become a weird internet phenomenon many decades.
Did we ever work out why it was in New Mexico? Why was that the dumping ground?
Oh, because New Mexico's in the American desert, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and that's where we would test nuclear bombs. Shit, you know what I mean? It's land we're not using. So if we got to dump stuff somewhere, hey, let's do it where we drop all those bombs. It's not like we're not growing crops there. So let's head over there. That's why it was there. Yeah, we're not gonna bury it in the woods.
Yeah,
that's where the bears live. That's where the bears.
Save the bears. Let's bury it.
Right? Yeah, the desert. Please.
Yeah.
Who wants to go there anyway?
What else do we have? We're kind of getting through a fair few of these myths today. This has been lots of fun.
No, well, I mean, there's other. Here's a good myth. This is what I actually heard. I think, God, I forget. Game Theory presented this, and of all the game theories, this is my favorite one. Have you played Mario Galaxy?
Yeah, a little bit. Probably.
Have you played Smash Brothers?
Yes.
Rosalina.
Yeah.
The theory is now in Mario Galaxy, Mario and Peach are enjoying their time as they do with Mushroom Kingdom until Bowser rolls in, raises hell, and takes her. And when that happens, it turns out he goes to the center of the galaxy, and this woman, Princess Rosalina, helps you. And people have seen her, blue gown, with blonde haircut. But there's a theory going around that she's from the future, and she's actually Mario and Peach's daughter.
Mario and Peach's daughter.
If you look at her facial features, it's almost an amalgamation of Mario and Peach's faces.
Yeah. See, I thought you were going to say Mario and Peach and Bowser, like the affair had happened.
Oh no, no. That's just what boys look at on DeviantArt. When they say more power to them. I'm not judging. I'm just shooting straight. No, this is just a theory that she's somehow from the future traveling through galaxies. I don't know, but yeah, she's the daughter of Mario and Peach, which would imply that at some point, because it's never been implied, but imply that at some point Mario and Peach,
got into the castle.
Cake.
Found the room in the castle.
Oh, yeah. He found that warp pipe. And he's going to travel it. Which I always like that there. I would always hope that was it's unofficial, and it's probably not true because, it's a Mario game. But I think that's a cute theory.
I think it probably is true. I'm going to go on the fighting side because I think that's the type of thing that Nintendo would do. They've kind of, let's kind of make it like this. And we won't tell anyone. And you'll never know. It'll be taken to the grave. But, yeah. I like it.
I enjoy it. It's one of my more favorite, just theory. A lot of theories I'm not always huge on. Usually a lot of the theories just completely ruin the game for me. But that was a cute one. That added to it.
Did you hear about there's some of the levels outside of games? You always hear about this where a game Shadow of the Colossus, and it's got a whole lot of world. If you can find a glitch out of the main map, you can go and play this game. It's like 10 times bigger open world game, but you only get to play a little bit of the game. And I think there's a World of Warcraft 1 and 2 where you can get into an old dungeon or something like that.
And it harkens back to minus World 1 or World -1 from Mario Brothers. I know for that, it's weird too because, I mean, it's got to be the same for most games even today that have that kind of this problem, but they're just data dumps. They're just lines of code that, like, they're not going to scrub them from the game, but they just got to put them somewhere, so just put them behind the invisible wall of nothing, you know?
I think they're test areas too for the developers. I know making a game, you kind of got to like have some area. Let's just go and see what happens if we do this, this, and this. But you don't want everyone to be doing that. So,
I mean, even if you look at like World 1-1 of Mario Brothers, I mean that it's all underwater, but it feels like a tutorial level. You know what I mean? I don't think there's any enemies or anything like that. So you are probably right on that end. It's just like little test areas that they had to throw in the game, but now the actual game's here, so we just cut that part out.
Yeah, let's just see how Mario swims. I can't be bothered making it all the way to the 5th level or something like that. We'll just put that in here so we can test it out.
Now, it should be noted that the Famicom disk drive version of Super Mario Brothers has 3 minus world levels. One of them is the minus. I could be wrong on this, so if anyone wants to correct me, one of them is the minus world proper that you play. Mm-hmm. The other one is, I think it's like World 3-1, but it's underwater. But it's World 3-1. It's just World 3-1. And the second one is another just redesign. It's another world. It's just that the colors are all like swapped and look all like funky and pixelated. And when you beat it, it just goes right back to the menu screen.
Yeah, no, that does sound. To me, that sounds like a test area, 100%. Like, I don't think. Let's just see what this does. Let's just do. But we all found it. They didn't They didn't hide it well enough.
Nope. Yeah. Someone poked a hole through the wall to nothing. I've always loved that in any game where you can just like punch out of the barrier. And just like, of course, your game ends up effing up and badly, and you got to reload because you glitched hard. But that's always been a cute thing.
I used to love it in the Call of Duty. The early ones, you could find these little boxes and jump up into the air, and then you'd be able to snipe from clouds, or you could go and off the map, and you could snipe back into the game. But they've kind of wrecked all that. They've fixed all that, I should say. They've made it so you can't do that, which is fair, but it used to be kind of fun going around the map trying to find all their little holes in their meshes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. No.
Sorry, did you hear about the PlayStation 2s for the Iraq War?
Yeah, so, okay. Let's go back in history, everybody. We're going back to the early noughties when the United States, we were at war with Iraq. I'm not going to get into the whole thing of it. But at that time, the rumor was that, the Iraqis, they had missiles and other pieces of technology, and they need computer chips for these technologies. And a cheap way for them to get all the computer chips they need would be to buy a whole bunch of PlayStation 2s. Gut them and use it because I guess the processor for it was good. I don't know if this is ever verified, but it was just it was almost so ridiculous because when you think about it kind of actually brings into mind the Logitech controller or the Mad Catz controller used in the Titan submersible. Just using video game technology, like something completely different of that. For such a big world reason like that, too, it just boggles the mind.
Well, I've seen a whole heap of PlayStation stacked up as a server room. I've seen that in like warships and that too, because they must have been cheap for their time. I know that PlayStation themselves sold the PlayStation 2s at a loss for a very, very long time. Maybe that all the components were more expensive than the actual console.
Yeah, I mean, according to reports, they were going to be used for missile guidance systems. That's what the processors were going to be used for. It was never confirmed. You know, I mean,
It
they
was
did
never
use missiles
denied.
before.
It wasn't denied.
Yeah, so I mean, it definitely it'd be a funny thing if it happened. I mean, it obviously didn't work because Saddam Hussein ain't playing too many PlayStation 2 games right now. But it's just another little urban legend that flows so well, and just the fact that it infiltrates like real world like war stories.
I know.
I mean, that's,
Well, there was a lot of talk, though, that the American government paid Activision for one to give Call of Duty the standing it does in the game industry, because once Call of Duty got popular, they could get people to go to war, and that's how that was kind of their recruitment policy, get people to play Call of Duty, and then they would be enrolled to fight. So I don't know how true that is either, but
honestly, I mean, it does it itself. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I just don't think the government needs to do anything at that point.
Yeah, but I think they pay. I think there's a bit of money that changed hands there, because they realized that was a cheaper way for them to make recruits than actually making ads on TV. Let's just
And remember, there have been, at least on the American side, there have been video games endorsed by certain military branches. Most of these games are like simulations to the point where like they're not games.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But they do get the endorsement. They're not like arcadey shooters like Call of Duty would be.
Yeah.
It's actually funny. Going through this list, like I was trying to think of good controversies and all that. And one thing that was surprised me as controversial, and I can see why, because people, for me, the majority of the time I've always worked, but people do think that blowing into a cartridge is wrong. Like, you shouldn't do it. And it was one of those things that kind of like, because no one ever said, hey, it wasn't an official thing. They never said blow into the cartridge. And most of the time, if you look at the back, it said do not blow in the cartridge. But we always did, and I never broke a system by doing it. It usually worked. It's kind of one of those things that is still a tradition to this day, though. They reference it in the Mario movie about blowing in cartridges. That itself caused kind of an uproar, because it's like, no, you're not supposed to. Why is Nintendo telling you to? Because they're clearly feeding to the nostalgic line, because who didn't blow into the cartridges when they were kids, trying to get your copy of Fester's Quest to work for the 5th time? You just keep blowing into it and keep hoping it works. Like, come on, work.
Well, I think it comes back down to the point that blowing into the cartridge is fine as long as no spit comes out of your mouth. But kids were really good at being a bit slobbery back then.
Yeah, I was
younger
a
they
gross
get.
kid.
Yeah.
I was peanut butter and candy stained from head to toe most of the time as a young child.
Yes.
I like peanut butter and candy. So I definitely see that. In fact, then it ended up becoming a different thing. I remember the first time when I started getting CDs, and I learned the hard way with because luckily I got music CDs before I got game CDs. And I learned the hard way that you can't just put CDs down on the counter, like just out. Like, that's stupid. You end up scratching that copy of 12 inches of snow, and then it doesn't play anymore and it stinks. I think that's one thing you can say about digital media. You don't have to blow into it, and you don't need to worry about it.
I choose to disagree. I've done this many times, blowing into the hole of my iPhone so I can charge it.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, get all the shit out of there, like all that little dust and all that gets in there. You just blow that out.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Yes. Am I right, everybody?
Yes, 100%.
No. Well, hey, you got to get it working. Got to blow into it, jiggle it, turn it off, and turn it back on. Whatever gets the job done.
Yeah, 100%. That was pretty fun. So next week we're going to do our favorite game. So if you want to put our favorite games for the year, I should say. So if you want to put down some comments on that, so we can, if you've got something to suggest, otherwise you'll have to listen to what we suggest, which is probably the right.
I'm like looking at the top games. I actually played a lot of new games this year, more so than last year. So luckily I'll be able to say something about most of them, which is good. I do got my personal pick. I'm sure most people probably guess what that is. But it was
Mega
a
Man.
lot of. You're right. Mega Man 2 wins every year, damn it. But yeah, there'll definitely be surprises. Maybe favorite console games. Doesn't have to be necessarily exclusive, but I think we'll definitely have a good talk because there's really not any big games. Everything that's coming out for the rest of the year is all like remasters and reissues. At least what I'm interested in. So I think we're good.
There is a few indie games that I'd like to go through. That I think some really small games, and that's where indie games do shine. If you can get through some of the bad ones, there's some really, really good ones towards in the indie pile that kind of surprise you, and I think that's what they do good.
Looking forward to it, man.
Looking forward to
talk about the winners, the losers. Maybe like the biggest news stories of 2023
yeah, we
gaming.
could do the biggest. Yeah, we could do biggest news stories.
Maybe break out events, characters and games, trends, if you will, certain controversies. We're gonna have to talk about the Nicki Minaj skin in Call of Duty at great length. So we'll definitely do that. It'll be good.
I've been playing Call of Duty, and you know how many times Nicki Minaj just bloody killed me? It's ridiculous. And you can see her from a mile away. She is shiny as F. Like you can see her a million miles. Yeah, she is so shiny. And I can see her coming and I just know that I'm going to die. When Nikki's there, it's just hard. It's bad.
Yeah, she'll kill you, of course. But I'm looking forward to that. Definitely some not just about like a couple actually controversies on their own that happened in 2023. It wasn't all fun and games. Well, it was all games technically, but it wasn't all fun.
There was a lot of anything that could happen. Really, that's what the game we did. So it's been So again, subscribe and all those things if you haven't done that already. You probably should have done it by now. It's way late in the video to be doing it.
But no, don't worry. They watched the whole thing with bated breath.
So, just waiting for me to say, "Hey, let's subscribe" at this time of the day. Yeah. Anyway, we're done for today. Have you got another conspiracy? Because this episode has been absolutely...
Well, now that we've talked about the conspiracy, I just want to say my sore throat did not silence me. All right, the truth came out about things like Polybius and blowing into cartridges and Laura Croft's boobs. All right, we will not be silent on these topics at all for one day here at Anything Gaming, where we discuss anything gaming.
All right, goodbye. See you guys.